Hi everyone, hope you enjoyed me reading the first 3 chapters of Planet Omar. I'm going to continue with the story now. So, chapter 4. Sundays pass pretty quickly because Sundays are science days. Dad calls them Science Sundays in one of those big booming voices, like it's the most fun you could ever have on a Sunday. Why? Because my dad is also a scientist, and I think he and my mum only had us 3 kids so they could create more scientists or something. I actually like science, so I don't mind. We always do fun things like making slime, creating fizzy eruptions, and making things go pop. There are 4 things that pretty much seem to happen on every Science Sunday. Number 1, Mum wants everything done very precisely. She's obsessive about it, but she pretends she's not because Science Sundays are supposed to be fun, not bossy. She ends up saying things like, "Just 1 millimetre more, my cotton bud," through gritted teeth, and "Are you sure you stirred that correctly, sunshine?" Number 2, Dad laughs at just how crazy Mum gets about the preciseness, and he kisses her head and says that's why she's the best scientist in the world. And she kisses his hand and smiles that she's the luckiest woman in the world. Super yuck. Number 3, Mariam always drops important parts of the experiment on the floor. Number 4, Isa always steps on the important parts of the experiment that Mariam drops on the floor. This is because he has ants in his pants, and in his shoes, and everywhere. And he can't stay still, ever. That Sunday, we did tornadoes in bottles, which is so cool. You should try it at home. You connect 2 bottles with a little pipe, like this. And you whirl the top bottle, which makes the water go down to the bottom bottle and sends air up, making a tornado. We set all the things up together on the kitchen table. My brain was thinking about telling Mariam to pass the bottles and pipes, but my mouth hadn't caught up with my brain yet and got things muddled up, so it came out as, "Pass the pipes." Mariam giggled. "Pipes?" "I mean the bottles and pipes," I giggled too, "but I like it. Pipes. I wish it was a real word." "If it was a real word, then it would just be normal and you wouldn't like it anymore," said Mariam. "That's so true," I said. Mum and Dad were bending over laughing in the corner of the kitchen table. When we asked them what was so funny, they said that in the Arabic language there is no P sound, so a pipe would end up being called a bibe. Then Mariam, who was showing off Googling with her smartphone, said that actually bipes are a type of weird, disgusting snake lizard type thing that look like they're inside out. Eventually, we got on with the experiment. "Oh yeah, tornado in a bottle," said Dad. Sometimes he gets really cheesy and excited, and Mariam and I look at each other and roll our eyes. But we kind of like it, really. "You can put glitter or food colouring in the bottle too to see the tornado better," said Mum. So Mariam and Isa both reached for the glitter, and Mariam dropped the bottle on the floor, sending glitter everywhere. "Right on schedule," said Dad with a peal of laughter. Mum hugged Mariam and kissed her, also giggling uncontrollably. I could see that Mariam wasn't taking it well. "Oh!" She shrugged Mum off and stomped towards the stairs. "Science is so lame, anyway." She does extra grumpy things like that a lot at the moment. Although it's not like she's always grumpy. Sometimes she's the nice Mariam too. It's weird. Dad says it's teenage hormones. Chapter 5. When I wake up on Monday morning, I feel like my lungs are pushing air out of me and not taking any back in, and my stomach was a giant heavy rock, making it impossible for me to get out of bed. Reasons I'm nervous. What if nobody likes me? What if the work is harder than at my old school? What if nobody wants to be my friend? What if the teacher is an alien? Marianne poked her head round the door and said, "Hurry up, lazy head, and stop pretending to be sick." I wasn't. I wondered how her lungs felt. She was acting pretty Mariam-like, so her lungs seemed to be normal. Then Dad appeared at the door too, and gave her one of his cheeky looks, which made his face look like he knew a secret. He came in and tickled me and threw me over his right shoulder like he was kidnapping me, then carried me downstairs and plunked me down in front of a bowl of porridge. Now I know what you might be thinking. Yuck! But actually, when you put biscuit spread into your bowl of porridge, it tastes very yummy. Though I'm only allowed 1 spoonful of the biscuit spread. I ate slowly because of the rock in my tummy. Mum said it would be okay and the teacher would make sure I made friends. I dragged my legs back up the stairs. I got washed. There was no uniform at this school, so I was allowed to wear whatever I wanted. I looked for my favourite sweatshirt and finally pulled it out from the space between my bed and my bedside table. Then I looked for my favourite jeans. They were exactly where I'd left them, on the floor next to the bookshelf. They had a stain on them from when Issa threw a barbecue chicken wing at me. Oh well, I put them on anyway. When I went downstairs, my mum went balmy. She took one look at me and flew off the handle. She said she couldn't believe it. That's all she actually said. She said it 5 times. I don't believe it. 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 Dad said calmly, "Son, I think Allah has given you clean clothes to wear, so go and put them on, please, or we'll be late." Then he kidnapped me on his shoulder again and helped me take out some clothes from my cupboard. I put them on as fast as humanly possible and ran down the stairs. I flew out of the front door towards the car where Mum was waiting with a cross look on her face. Chapter 6. Thought of getting into the car made my tummy feel like there were frogs hopping about in it, just waiting to leap up to my throat. So I took a deep breath and imagined a better way to get to school. On a super awesome, magnificent dragon. I could see him there now, just hovering beside our car and looking at me with a smile. He made me feel better. About everything. The dragon bowed his head and flung open the car door for me, which made me laugh out loud. "What's so funny, Omar?" Mum asked, one hand still on the handle of the door. But I just shook my head and buttoned my lips. My mum never really understands about how to imagine things properly, so there's no point explaining. I guess it's a kind of thing grown-ups forget how to do. So I just stared at the dragon's blue and green shimmery scales and long swooping tail. As I strapped myself in, I wondered what it would be like to ride him to school instead of driving. He'd fly at least 120 miles per hour. He looked at me with his almond-shaped eyes and let out a puff of steam from his tiny nostrils. I imagined him riding alongside us all the way to school. When we got out and walked to the gate, I made him breathe out a huge plume of steam and in my head I said, "I pronounce thee H2O, as if I were a king or something. I thought that was a good name for him because the steam is made from water and H2O is the chemical name for water. That's the kind of sciencey things my parents love to talk about. So, there I was, the new kid in the class. I was petrified, and my lungs were still doing that funny thing. I made them feel better by imagining H2O being silly at the window. He stuck his tongue out. Then he put bits of popcorn into each nostril and blew them out. The teacher, who was called Mrs. Hutchinson, introduced me to the class. She was what my mum would call a pear-shaped person. I liked her from the first time I saw her, and later learned that the springy auburn curls reacted to her mood and told the story of her day. When she was happy, those curls were happy. They would bounce merrily out of her head like beams of sunshine. When she was tired, they would flop lazily on her cheeks. And when she was cross, they looked more like the twisty metal part of a drill. Sometimes when she was angry, I would imagine a drill-headed Mrs. Hutchinson making a big hole in the wall quite easily. She asked me to sit down next to a red-headed kid called Charlie. Charlie had lots of freckles all over his face and thick-rimmed glasses. I thought he looked cool, so I smiled at him. He smiled back at me. He was missing one of his front teeth. Charlie told me the school was okay. The lessons were okay. The playground was okay when it wasn't wet. And Mrs. Hutchinson's class was mostly filled with okay kids. Except for Daniel. I decided that okay was Charlie's favourite word. Daniel's the one you have to look out for, okay? Just stay out of his way. Okay, I said. I thought about all the times my mum had told me to stay away from something which seemed to make me drawn towards it like a magnet instead. Like when I just had to open Marianne's secret box because I was told I wasn't allowed to. And when I did, a gazillion teeny tiny beads came pouring out all over her bedroom floor just as she walked in. I gulped. Ooh. Chapter 7. I thought I was going to get through the day without any problems. Until lunchtime, that is. Daniel bounded up to Charlie and me and said, "The new kid and the weird kid sitting together. How nice." He said nice in a different way to when people normally say it. I wondered if it was sarcasm, but my sarcasm detector isn't very good. I can get confused when people say things all upside down. I tried to figure out if actually Daniel wasn't as bad as Charlie had warned, and he did think it was nice that we were sitting together, or if he was being mean, because it obviously wasn't very nice of him to call Charlie the weird kid. Anyway, Mum and Dad say to always think about things before blurting them out. I could feel Charlie trying to think of what to say too. He was taking air into his lungs really deeply, as if he was preparing to say something, and then opening his mouth and closing it again, but nothing came out. I think we were both silent for a super long time, which seemed to make Daniel very cross. He shouted, "Idiots!" before walking away. When he was gone, Charlie said, "See, he's always horrible to me." "Why?" I asked. "Did you two have a fight about something?" "No, he just hates me for no reason. I think he hates the whole class, but he hates me the most." Charlie looked so sad and so small, I couldn't help putting my arm around him, which made Charlie look at me and smile his toothy smile. When Mum picked me up later, I told her all about my new friend. I saw her breathe a phew. I guess she was worried about how good or not good my first day would be since I was so nervous. I told her that I liked Mrs. Hutchinson and her amazing changing hair. Mum told me about her day too. It sounded like she'd had a great time at her dream job, poking at microscopic stuff with fancy equipment. And on the way home, she'd passed a chocolate shop, so she bought some for our neighbour to say hello properly. Thankfully, she brought one of those fancy adult chocolate boxes with lots of dark chocolates in, which are so yuck that I didn't wish the box was for me instead, which I normally do when we have to give chocolate to other people. I thought we could pop round when we get home. Okay, I said slowly, remembering how grumpy the neighbour had been last time I saw her. We picked up Mariam and the little human thing we call a brother, who always comes home from nursery with half his lunch on his jumper. Mum had to neaten Issa up before we popped over to next door, because she's embarrassed to have mucky kids. She even said to me, "Wait, let me hear your run through my fingers." Mum always says things the wrong way round when she's hurrying. "You mean run your fingers through his hair," said Mariam, because she likes to correct people. Yes, that, said Mum, and she marched us all over and took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. We waited. Nothing. We waited some more. Nothing. So I reached forward and rapped on the door really loud a few times. "Why did you do that?" Mum hissed like a quiet, angry snake. "What?" I shrugged. "Maybe the doorbell isn't working." "Well, it's rude," hissed Snake Mum, and just then the door opened quietly and eerily, like in the horror movies. There stood an old lady, quite a short one, with lots of white hair and one of those cardigans that old ladies wear. My grandma has one. We all said hi pretty much together, except Issa, who said, "Assalamu alaikum," like he had been taught to say to our nanny. The old lady was really weird because she just stood there without reacting. She didn't say hello. She just stared. Mum explained that we were the new neighbours. The old lady stared. Mum said, "We just thought we'd come over to introduce ourselves." The old lady stared. Mariam gave me a secret whack on the back of the arm, which was meant to say, "Oh my God, this is so awkward." So I gave her a secret whack back, which was meant to say, "Oh, gee, I know." Then Mum asked the creepy, rude next-door neighbour what her name was. Just when we thought she wouldn't say anything, she blurted out, "Rogers," and then slammed the door. I glanced up at Mum. She looked like one of those helium balloons that hardly has any helium left in it at all.